Hello, everyone, and welcome to Help Desk Live, episode 31. My name is Jen Sheffer. I'm the Instructional Technology Specialist here at Burlington High School, and joining us today for episode 31 is Stephanie Icadoro from Duxbury, Massachusetts. She is the Mathematics Curriculum Coordinator for grades 6 through 12 in a one-to-one learning environment. I met Stephanie recently at the Learn Launch conference in Cambridge at Harvard University. She was part of the Classrooms of the Future showcase where I brought my help desk students, and I was able to talk with Stephanie about some of the progressive math curriculum that she's developing in Duxbury, and I thought she would be a wonderful guest for Help Desk Live. So I wanted to bring her on, and she graciously agreed to spend some time with us this morning. So Stephanie, I'd like to thank you for joining us, and if you could describe to our viewers your role in Duxbury as well as the specifics of your one-to-one environment.
Sure, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I view myself as really a teacher support role. I do a variety of things. I teach one class, but other than that, I'm also I'm evaluating my staff. I'm providing them with professional development. Sometimes that professional development is content specific. Sometimes it is specifically targeted toward integrating technology. And then I am also modifying the curriculum and supporting my teachers in the development and modification of the curriculum. And I work as a member of the admin team as well. So we're also doing district planning, with regard to curriculum, our goals with professional development, and our goals with the evaluation tool. So more specifically, my school district is a small school district on the South Shore. We do have an iConnect program for grades 6 through 12. That is our catchphrase for our one-to-one MacBook Air environment. In grades 7 through 12, all students have a MacBook Air. They take home with them. In grade 6, we have enough MacBook Airs for every student. However, we don't have them take them home. And then in K through 5, we do have quite a bit of access to iPads. So in grades throughout their experience at Duxbury Public Schools, grades K through 12, kids have access to technology, and they're consistently integrating technology into the student learning experience. So it is a great school district to be in. We have lots of resources at our disposal with regard to integrating technology. So we're doing great things.
Great. You sound very similar to Burlington. So it sounds like the Duxbury students are fortunate, as are Burlington students, to have, like you said, all that access to mobile technology, which is great, and is really lending itself to transforming the learning experience for kids. So I asked you to be on the show and serve as our guest specifically because of the course that you described at the dinner where we met the night before the conference, and then at the conference itself where you brought some of your students and they gave the Ignite talk. And could you tell us about that specific course, math technology, and how that differs from, I guess you could say, traditional math courses? Because it was really fascinating, and that's really why I wanted you to be on.
Sure. So the course that I teach this year is called Math Technology Applications. It's a course designed for seniors. We do have a 4-year mathematics graduation requirement for our students here, and this is our inaugural year with that policy. So the course is a year-long course, and it is designed for the students that are leaving Algebra 2 or leaving a slower paced pre-calculus course, and they need that 4th-year math requirement. So it's designed specifically targeting the kids that haven't really been successful in previous year math courses and aren't quite calculus ready. So that's what the course is for. The goals of the course are really to get students to connect mathematics with the real world. I rewrote the curriculum over the summer with a colleague, and we kind of merged all of the different things that we've done in years past into this course. For instance, we are grading students on rubrics. We're using competency-based grading. We're allowing students to modify their assignments and become more successful and become proficient at each of our assignments. So we're doing that. We're also we are completely performance-based, and using project-based learning to move from unit to unit, as opposed to teaching the course in that traditional mathematics format where we say, here's the warm-up, here are the notes, here's the worksheet, come back tomorrow. So we're doing things a little differently. The course is very thematic by design. We first did a unit on college and career, and within that unit, we had students choosing 3 colleges and 3 careers that they're interested in. So we're integrating that student choice piece so that they're engaged in what they're learning. And then we took those topics and we use linear regression to try and help students make a decision for, based on current trends in salary increases over time. What will you be making when you graduate from college if you were to choose this career? So we use linear regression to model that and allow students to take what they learned in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and actually apply it to the real world. And then they did something similar for colleges. They looked at 3 different colleges, and they looked at projecting out what would the total cost of college be if they chose this particular college. And then we had them, what was different from that, because they had already learned linear regression, they just hadn't necessarily applied it in the depth that we asked them to do, and with topics that were relevant to them. The additional piece was they had to present to us, their performance assessment was a presentation talking us through what their 3 choices were for colleges, what their 3 choices were for careers, what the projected total cost was, what the projected salary was, and how they arrived at their decision, which college, based on which career they'd like, which college is the best fit. And they really had to talk about cost effectiveness. So it was interesting for them and engaging, but they were also using mathematics concepts that they had learned in previous years and applying them and becoming more polished with those skills. Another project that we did exponential regression. So if you notice, the course itself really lends itself to taking mathematics and using mathematics concepts to kind of model what's going on in the real world and use mathematics to help support your decision-making process, which is really what we want students to graduate high school with an understanding of. Mathematics is, it's a lot bigger than understanding what an apothem is in geometry. It's about understanding why mathematics is used in the real world. So our overarching essential question for the course is, how can I use mathematical modeling to understand the world around me? And that's really the premise and the goal of the course. We're looking at ways to integrate the use of data and statistics and mathematical models to try and help understand the world around us, but also to help inform our decision-making process. And that's really, all of the units have that common theme. We did a project on alternative energy that was very similar. We used exponential regression with that, but we also looked at ratios, rates, and proportions throughout the year, and tried to look at ways to interpret data and integrate that into our decision-making process. So the students are constantly looking at math and doing math, but they're also trying to find a way to synthesize those ideas and talk about it in a real world context. So that's what makes it very special and very unique. And what's great about it is, because we've taken the weight off of the computation, and we've made it more comprehensive and more big picture. Students feel like they can be successful in the course that haven't necessarily been successful in mathematics courses in years past. So that's what makes it really special and really unique. And if you noticed at the conference, my students, the best part of being at the Learn Launch conference was listening to my math students talk about what they're doing, talk about the impact that the course has had, with passersby at the Classroom of the Future showcase, and really get a chance to talk about what they love about the course, and that's made a world of difference, I think, in their lives and in their confidence level when it comes to tackling math problems in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, to hear you talk about some of the units and projects that your students have been completing, I mean, it doesn't get any more real world than that. So that excited me to hear your emphasis on the real world application of math, because I remember myself as a high school student not being particularly strong in math because I sort of was missing that real world connection. And I think that's true of today's students too. Many students are sitting in a math course and they may be asking themselves, when am I ever going to use this again in the real world? When you're calculating the total cost of college and jobs and salary, I'm pretty sure your students weren't asking those questions. So kudos to you for really creating something that is relevant for students. And I love what you just said about building confidence in your students in their math capabilities. Because again, that's something that I lacked. I think it's something a lot of students in general lack, and they get intimidated by math. So that's...
And too, and that's really how we arrived at that overarching essential question for the course. We're trying to answer, and I've been teaching for over a decade, and I've heard it every year. The question never goes away. When am I ever going to use this? So that's why the overarching essential question of the course is, how can I use mathematical modeling to understand the world around me? And we're constantly redirecting kids to that question and talking to them about how, true mathematics, that's exactly the purpose of mathematics, to look for patterns and to be able to use computation and use patterns to better explain the world around us. And if we can, as a program, or in public education in general, just instill that conversation in students that that's the purpose.
Right.
Mathematics is to understand the world around you, then maybe we can stray kids away from asking that question, and we can get them to be interested in the study of mathematics. So I mean, that's kind of my lifelong goal. So hopefully the course does that to some degree.
It sounds like it is, for sure. A couple things you mentioned too is that the course is competency-based. So
sorry, my lights are on a motion sensor.
That's okay, that's okay. You mentioned competency-based, and when I started teaching in 2000, I was at a school that was already implementing competency-based assessments. So they were ahead of the curve for sure. And could you talk a little bit about competency? Because I think it's such a different mindset for teachers to go from, here's your assignment, this is when it's due. If you don't get it in on time, I'm either taking points off or you're just going to get a 0. There are no retakes. There are no redos. It's all or nothing approach, and which I think really can be detrimental to students in their learning. So I'm an advocate for competency-based learning. I've also had conversations, help desk students and I have had conversations with Star Saxteen, who has a whole different approach to grading. She doesn't even grade students. She lets them self-assess. So there's some really progressive approaches to education, competency-based assessments being one of them. So could you talk about that a little bit more, as well as the connection between your course and Common Core standards, because we had talked about that as well.
The course is completely aligned to the Common Core. We actually looked through when we wrote the curriculum. We looked through the major topics in Algebra 1, in Geometry, and Algebra 2, and we designed thematic units around the application of those concepts, and then aligned the course curriculum to the Common Core in that way. So we use UBD templates when we're designing our curriculum, so we're able to work backwards like that, identify those major themes, and then build out a real-world application that's connected to those themes, and then align ourselves to what those skill sets need to be along the way. So the course itself is absolutely aligned to the Common Core. With regard to competency-based learning, I do enjoy it because I'm allowing students the opportunity to be successful by doing that. But there's also, I'm of the mindset where, and I feel the same way about technology. We are in a one-to-one learning environment, but that doesn't mean laptops need to be open the whole time. So I like a blended learning environment, and I also believe that in some way our means of grading students needs to also be blended. The competency model, I think, works really well when we're looking big picture and we're talking about overall, what are these students grabbing about these concepts? Are they showing mastery of linear regression, or do we need to backtrack on skills? Do we need to backtrack on applications? Because there are all sorts of steps to that concept, from understanding how to write a linear equation, to understanding what that equation means, to understanding how to use that equation to predict future values. So there are all different components that we can break down there. And when we're grading on competency-based, we're looking big picture. Does the student really get the idea of why it is we're using linear regression, why we're creating a mathematical model for this, and what the uses are for that? Does the student understand that? I apologize if you can hear the announcements.
That's okay. No, we really can't, but.
Okay. And then, so in that regard, it is important that we grade, when we're looking at that big picture, it is important that we use competency-based. However, along the way, it's also important that we embed some standards-based grading as well. Doing a quick 5-question quiz or 10-question quiz on whether or not a kid understands how to write a linear equation, and whether or not they're getting all of the components. Are they following the mechanics of that exercise? Do they know how to get from the start, where they have 2 points, to plugging that in, to following through the process of getting an equation in mx plus b form and then utilizing that equation? We still need to look at the mechanics of that, and we still need to grade students and their progression through that skill. Because it is so imperative that they understand the mechanics and the computation behind the application. So, just as a blended learning environment, just as we need kids to have their laptops open, be collaborating online, be engaging, just as we need them to do that and do some paper and pencil work, I think we also need to get to a blended grading approach, where we are looking at now, we're looking at whether or not we can do something competency-based big picture, or whether or not we really need to look at the skill set. And it doesn't mean that 5-question quiz or that 10-question quiz isn't used as a pre-test and a post-test, so that we can see if they're getting to mastery and target those skills. We need to be adaptive, because our goal here is to get kids to learn math. Not to go from point A to point B and check off that we've done all of the standards that are within our curriculum and move on to the next topic. Our goal here is to really make sure that students are able to take what they learned in high school math and apply it to the real world. So anything that we can do to get them there is helpful for them. And I think we need to step outside of our comfort zone and look at what's best for kids when we are building courses and building assessments, and looking at what would be most helpful with regard to the nature of the assignment.
And I would be willing to bet that another goal is not only to get students to learn math, but to enjoy and appreciate math. Would that be correct?
Right. That would be that is a big goal.
Right. I mean,
but it's certainly a priority to get them to understand that, you know, math isn't just this required course that they have to get through, that their understanding of mathematics can open quite a few doors for them in the future. Data science, I believe, is one of the fastest growing careers in the country right now. And with that requires an in-depth understanding of the application of mathematics. So we really do have a responsibility to prepare all kids, not just some kids, to be able to be successful at applying mathematics to the real world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I have a third grade daughter who is really showing some signs of loving math and, you know, asking me lots of questions related to math. And, you know, I'll come back at her with a question, and, you know, she'll tell me about what she's learning in the class. I think we talked about this actually. Perimeter. I said, what did you learn today in math? And she said, perimeter. And I said, well, why is that important? And she right away said, well, if you want to bring something into your house, you need to know the perimeter to make sure it will fit into your house. And I said, cool, give me an example of what you might want to bring into your house. And she said, well, a stove. And she was, you know, and I think we kind of clapped like, yay, for that elementary school that is actually having that real world math connection at the third grade. So I hope that continues throughout, not just for her, like you said, but for all kids, like we owe all kids.
And what's really important too about the conversation that you had with your daughter, and we need to do more of this in the classroom. You asked her, well, why is that important?
Exactly.
I think as math teachers, we want to give kids all of the information because we know the information and we know why it's important. And we want to support kids. And I think, you know, the standards for mathematical practice, when those came out, those 8 mathematical standards really tell you and really paint a picture for what instruction should look like in the mathematics classroom. And your math teachers that are listening in are going to know what I'm talking about. But moreover, big picture, we're asking teachers to back away from feeding kids answers and start asking some probing questions that get kids inquisitive about learning mathematics and inquisitive about what the purpose is. Why is this concept important? Where could we use it? And getting kids to engage in mathematical discourse, you know, instead of just saying, you know, here's a question. This is how you solve it. This is how you get from point A to point B. Circle your answer. Now try 5 other questions like it, and now we're going to move on to the next type of question.
Yeah.
You know, we're straying away from that standard approach to instructing kids in mathematics. That was really, I call it memorization regurgitation. You know, because I actually had a chemistry teacher in high school that called it that. But, you know, we're just having kids rehearse the process of concepts rather than talking about, well, why is this important? And really, if students are going to understand math and make connections between concepts and understand the purpose of math in the real world, we need to all be asking them, well, why is this important?
Right, exactly. Well, what you're saying actually is a nice segue into my last question for you, and that is, you talked about competency-based assessment, but tell me a little bit about testing. Are you still doing testing in your district, and how's that going?
Absolutely. We are. We have common unit tests, and we, you know, we have quizzes and chapter tests along the way. I would say that my course is a little more unique than the rest of our mathematics courses in the district. And, you know, and part of the reason is because of the nature of the course and where it's placed, because it is primarily for seniors, and it's named Math Technology Applications. So we're able to focus on applications. Throughout the rest of the course curriculum in grades 6 through 12, we do have plenty of teachers. I have a great group of teachers that are looking for ways to apply mathematics to the real world. They're doing PBL. They are doing performance tasks that involve writing, that involve using tech tools to try and look at the application of mathematics. So we have quite a good, healthy mix right now of all the different ways that we do assess kids. There is a high school focus right now on writing across the curriculum. So this year we've been integrating a lot of writing and mathematics assignments, which I really enjoy, because you get to see how much a kid understands the concept when you ask them, when you give them a writing prompt and you ask them to tell me what you know about this quadratic equation. Tell me how I would solve the roots. Solve for the roots. Tell me what the graph looks like. How do you know what's the connection between the graph and the algebraic form? And get students talking about their understanding. So we're using a wide variety of assessment methods. I wouldn't necessarily say that that we're going to abandon multiple choice testing in the near future. Unfortunately, the SATs have multiple choice, the MCAS has multiple choice, the AccuPlacer has multiple choice. So there is still a need to prepare our students for that kind of assessment.
Keyword, unfortunately.
Right.
RealWorld does not have multiple choice, as far as I know.
Right. So, at the same time, it's a balancing act.
Right.
Much like a blended learning environment, much like the need for introducing kids to use technology and to do pencil and paper and to collaborate with each other, we also have a responsibility to do blended assessment methods.
Absolutely.
In some ways that lends itself to the format of the MCAS still, where we have multiple choice, short answer, and open response. We do still have those multiple choice assessments. Sometimes we're using them as formative, sometimes we're using them as part of a summative, but they're never really standing alone. And then there's, of course, that need for short answer type math questions where it's a little bit more open-ended, but it's still a little guided. And then those open response questions, they really lend themselves really well to a writing assignment or to a multi-step problem where they have to show and explain what they're doing and what their next step is. And we see that a lot in proofs and geometry. So it's important that we don't abandon one kind of assessment because our goal is to prepare students for anything that may be thrown at them, whether or not that's a standardized assessment to get into college, to show mastery so that they can get their diploma, or whether or not that is a performance-based assessment so that we can show them how to communicate and collaborate and really be prepared for the job market and shine in that way. We have a responsibility to really give kids exposure to everything. That's what's so unique about high school. Is we don't get to pick and choose. We have to be very comprehensive about what we're doing to make sure we're preparing all kids to be successful.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Learning from you and about what you're doing in your math curriculum was really exciting to me, and that's why I wanted you to be on the show. And could you tell our viewers how they could connect with you? And are there resources about your course that you're willing to share? How could folks stay connected with you via social media or a blog or a website?
I do have a website. My website is mathyacadoro.jigsy.com. The trick in staying in contact with me will be spelling that last name. But my Twitter handle is identical to my website. My website is LinkedIn on my Twitter handle. So they can absolutely stay in touch with me through Twitter. So my Twitter handle is @mathyacadoro. I'm sure you'll be sharing that.
I was going to say, don't bother spelling it. I will just go ahead and share that in the blog post right after this episode.
And on my website, I maintain a blog. I also include resources. There is a general layout and outline in one of my recent blog posts on what the course looks like. And then I do embed some professional development resources as well. So there's a variety of stuff out there, and there's a way to contact me through email on the blog. And then you could also follow me on Twitter and contact me through that as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. It was a pleasure meeting you Thursday night. We have a ton in common.
We do.
Education and otherwise. So I love your student focus. You're an advocate for student voice, as am I, and that right there led me to say Stephanie would be fantastic for Help Desk Live. And I have a couple Help Desk students who are here now, brand new to the program, sort of observing. Hopefully, they've been observing the way I've been facilitating this interview, and hopefully they'll be up next to practice those authentic communication skills. And I'm certainly going to share this episode with our math department, but this is going to be archived on the Help Desk Live YouTube channel. So those of you who have tuned in, thank you so much. Stay tuned for episode 32. Hopefully that will be facilitated by a student. And if you're interested in being a guest on Help Desk Live, don't hesitate to contact me. You can do so on Twitter. I'm at JL Scheffer, that's SCHEFFER. And you can also reach out to me on Google+. I'm plus Jennifer Scheffer. And thank you so much for watching. And again, Stephanie, thank you for serving as our guest. This was fantastic. Makes me want to take math technology at Duxbury High School. Wish I had a course like that in high school. So keep doing what you're doing for kids. It's fantastic, and hopefully this will motivate some people to create something similar to what you've started in Duxbury. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And one of my favorite conversations to have is looking for ways to alternatively assess students and looking for ways to make math more thematic and get kids to have connections with, to make connections with the real world in their mathematics class. So anybody that wants to talk to me about that, I would be happy to do so. It's one of my life's passions. So thank you for having me.
Totally evident. So thanks everyone for watching. Stay tuned for future episodes of Help Desk Live.